Society loves to whisper in a man's ear that being single is some sort of failure. That if you're not chasing love, locking down a relationship, or settling into a family by a certain age, you're falling behind. But let me tell you the truth they don't want you to hear. The longer a man stays single, the stronger he becomes. Not because he's avoiding love, but because he's building something far more powerful, himself. When a man chooses to be single with purpose, he doesn't become bitter. He becomes dangerous, not in a reckless way, but in a grounded, unshakable way. He becomes the kind of man who doesn't need attention to feel worthy or a relationship to feel complete. And that's the man who becomes truly magnetic. Here are the 5 reasons why staying single can forge you into your strongest self. When a man chooses to remain single and embraces solitude, he begins to develop a deeper sense of discipline that many never experience. Without the emotional obligations or distractions that come from a relationship, he's left alone with his thoughts, his habits, and his time. This is where the transformation begins. There's no one to hold him accountable, no one pushing him to get up early, go to the gym, eat right, or chase his goals. It's all on him, and that's exactly where strength is built, when no one is watching and you do it anyway. In solitude, a man learns to become his own structure. He starts creating routines that support his growth. He wakes up with purpose because he knows no one else is going to hand him progress. It forces him to learn the value of consistency. He begins to push through laziness, procrastination, and comfort, not because someone's motivating him, but because he's becoming the kind of man who leads himself. That inner accountability is what separates men who merely survive from men who thrive. Discipline built in solitude also means he learns how to delay gratification. He doesn't need instant rewards or external validation. He starts to take pride in the quiet wins, the early mornings, the heavy lifts, the extra hours of study, the financial sacrifices, the strategic thinking. Over time, this becomes his edge. While others distract themselves with temporary pleasure or constant emotional noise, he is sharpening his focus. This kind of self-built discipline isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It shows up in the way he walks, the way he speaks, the way he carries himself. And people feel it. The man who has mastered himself in silence becomes the man who commands respect effortlessly, because he's earned it. When a man is single and embraces the silence that comes with it, something powerful begins to happen. His mind becomes clear. Without the emotional noise of constant texting, relationship drama, or the pressure to maintain someone else's expectations, he starts to reconnect with himself. In that quiet space, he can finally hear his own thoughts without interference. And that's where real clarity begins to grow. Most people are so busy reacting to others that they rarely stop to ask what they truly want. But when a man is alone, he has the space to explore that question deeply. What does he want from life, from relationships, from his future? What kind of legacy is he building? What kind of man does he want to become? These aren't easy questions, but they don't get answered until the noise is turned down. And when there's no one around to influence his decisions, he starts to think more intentionally. This clarity also allows him to set better goals. Not goals based on comparison, not goals influenced by validation, but goals that align with his true values. He becomes more selective, more strategic, more focused. He stops chasing approval and starts pursuing purpose. He doesn't waste time on distractions that don't serve him, because he knows exactly where he's headed. With clarity comes peace, and with peace comes power. When a man can sit with himself, fully comfortable in his own silence, he becomes grounded in a way that few are. His presence changes. His decisions become sharper, his actions more meaningful. And when someone finally enters his life, it won't be because he's lost or lonely. It will be because he's already whole, and he chose connection from a place of strength, not confusion. That kind of clarity makes him unstoppable. When a man spends time alone and becomes comfortable in his own space, something shifts. He begins to stop settling for less. Not just in relationships, but in every area of life. He starts to recognize his value more clearly because he's no longer caught up in chasing validation or filling a void. He's not with someone just to avoid being alone. He's alone by choice, and that makes his standards rise. In solitude, he becomes more in tune with what drains him versus what energizes him. He notices how much peace he has when he's not tolerating things that don't serve him. He doesn't feel the pressure to entertain conversations that go nowhere, or invest time in relationships that lack depth or alignment. Instead of fearing loneliness, he begins to respect his own time and energy. He becomes protective of his space, his goals, and his emotional bandwidth. This shift means he's no longer impressed by surface-level attraction or short-term attention. He looks for alignment, someone who adds value to the life he's already built. If that's not there, he has no issue walking away, because he's not desperate. He's fulfilled on his own. He knows that settling for less just to have company is a cost he's no longer willing to pay. Over time, this mindset sharpens his judgment. He becomes better at recognizing red flags, setting boundaries, and choosing wisely. The longer he stays single with purpose, the more he refuses to compromise on the standards he's developed. And ironically, that's exactly what makes him more attractive. Because he's not trying to prove himself. He's simply being a man who knows his worth and refuses to waste it on anything less than what he truly deserves. That inner strength makes him powerful, grounded, and rare. When a man is single and has no emotional commitments pulling at his time or energy, he's given a rare opportunity to go all in on his mission, without distractions or the need to constantly divide his focus between a partner and his personal goals. He has the freedom to chase what matters most to him. This is where purpose is forged. The long hours, the grind, the late nights building a business, mastering a craft, or pursuing a vision, this is where he separates himself from the average man. It's in this season of solitude that his ambition becomes sharper. He doesn't have to explain why he's working late or justify why he's focused on self-development instead of socializing. He can build with ruthless discipline. Whether it's building financial freedom, leveling up in his career, getting his body into peak condition, or developing new skills, his time is his own. That freedom, when used intentionally, becomes a weapon. A man who masters his mission becomes magnetic. His confidence is rooted not in how many women he can attract, but in how locked in he is on his path. People notice it. He walks differently. He speaks with conviction. He's grounded, not because he's trying to impress, but because he knows where he's going. And that kind of clarity is rare. Later, when a relationship does come into his life, he doesn't lose himself in it. Why? Because his purpose was established before she arrived. He doesn't make her his mission. He invites her into a life that already has direction. That difference is massive. Most men seek purpose through a relationship, but the strong ones, they build their mission first and let everything else align with that. That's the man who becomes unstoppable and unforgettable. When a man spends a significant amount of time single, he eventually learns how to manage his emotions without relying on anyone else. This emotional independence becomes one of the strongest foundations of his character. He stops looking for someone to reassure him when he's uncertain, to cheer him up when he's down, or to validate him when he's doubting himself. Instead, he learns how to process emotions internally, how to sit with discomfort, and how to grow from it rather than run from it. He doesn't need a woman to tell him he's valuable. He already knows. He doesn't need someone to complete him. He's already whole, and that changes everything. Because most relationships fall apart when one or both people are emotionally dependent. When someone needs constant reassurance, attention, or affirmation to feel okay, they become reactive. They're easily shaken. But a man who's learned to regulate his own emotions doesn't get pulled into drama or emotional chaos. He stays calm, grounded, and in control. This emotional self-reliance also means he doesn't chase relationships out of fear of being alone. He chooses them from a place of strength. He can walk away if something doesn't align and not feel broken. He doesn't panic when someone withdraws or plays games, because his peace isn't tied to anyone else's behavior. Over time, this independence becomes incredibly attractive. Women sense that he isn't seeking something from them. He's simply sharing his life from a position of power, not need. That energy creates respect, desire, and curiosity. He's not emotionally available to just anyone, and that makes him rare. A man who masters his emotions in solitude becomes unshakable. In relationships, he doesn't just survive love. He leads it with strength, clarity, and emotional maturity. This isn't about rejecting love. It's about becoming so solid, so self-reliant, so fulfilled on your own, that love becomes a choice, not a need. So if you're single right now, don't see it as a void. See it as a furnace, a place where pressure builds power. Because the man who walks alone long enough walks into every room like he owns it.